Good afternoon. Welcome to Hebel am Ufer. It's our first afternoon, so I'm very happy to see the house full. We have an upcoming talk, as you know, why the end is near, and while the end is near, we are wondering why Joshua Oppenheimer chose as his first feature, being an acclaimed filmmaker for documentaries, why he chose a musical as a genre to talk about climate change, about classism, and a lot of topics. We welcome Aida, Josh, and George is here for us on stage. Please enjoy the conversation.
Ich brauche gar keins. Well, thank you all for coming. Thank you, Tobias, for introducing us, and welcome to Listen to the End. I'd like to extend, most importantly, a warm welcome to all of you here in the audience. Thanks for joining us on a Sunday afternoon to talk about, well, the end, the film, but maybe also the upcoming end of us all, who knows. I'm Aida Baghernejad. I have the great honor to moderate the talk today, and an even greater honor to introduce and welcome our two panelists, George MacKay and Joshua Oppenheimer. You're all really good at clapping, and I would encourage you to just keep going with clapping. That really gives us the energy to have an even better conversation than we would otherwise. I'll do something very cringe now. I will introduce you two here on stage, even though you don't need any introduction, and talk about you as if you weren't here, so apologies for that already. And we'll chat a little bit first, and then we'll open to questions from the floor. So you have a little bit of homework as well, not only keeping the clapping on, but also to come up with really amazing and challenging questions for the next 45-ish minutes before we turn over to you. Is that all right for you? You can show that by clapping, for example. Good, thank you. So George MacKay, you're a British actor, multi-award winning, whom you all may know from his very first film, Peter Pan, in 2003. I definitely remember that one. And probably more recently from Sam Mendes' World War I film, 1917, and the now upcoming The End that we will talk about today. We're so excited to have you, George.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Joshua Oppenheimer. Joshua is an American director who is probably best known for his documentary, The Act of Killing, from 2013, about the mass killings in Indonesia in 1965 and 66. Both The Act of Killing and its follow-up, The Look of Silence, from 2014, won multiple awards. You have probably heard about them, watched them. They will have probably haunted you as much as they haunt me to this day, in a good way. The End is his first feature film and his first musical. Thank you for coming and joining us.
Thank you.
So Joshua, most members of this audience won't have had the chance yet to watch the film quite yet. Can you give us a little glimpse, a little synopsis of the movie?
Sure. First of all, thank you all for this warm welcome. The End is our kind of golden age musical about a last human family surviving alone in a bunker decades after environmental catastrophe has left the world all but uninhabitable. It's like The Act of Killing and The Look of Silence, a film fundamentally about storytelling, how we tell stories to obscure the world from ourselves, to obscure our pasts from ourselves, and because we are our pasts, to obscure ourselves from ourselves. It's about how we make up and cling to excuses to ease our regrets, how somehow we manage to believe those excuses, which is to say it's about the uniquely human ability to lie to ourselves and the terrible consequences of that self-deception. There's a mother, a father, played by Tilda Swinton and Michael Shannon, a son, played by George, a doctor, the family's doctor, Lenny James, butler, Tim McInerney, and the mother's best friend and a kind of surrogate mother to the son, played by Brona Gallagher. And son is born in this place and has never seen the outside world, never seen the sky. George can talk more about the character, and I'm sure he will later as we dig into this. And at some point, I guess that the bunker's really a kind of prison of shame, where the parents in particular, but all the older generation that have raised son, kind of hide the truth about the world, have agreed to have a kind of mutual agreement to keep secrets from the son. And son's job is to reassure all of them that he believes their lies, really, even as he has fateful clues about the truth. And then one day, a young woman, a sole survivor from the devastated world above, which we never see, breaks in. And the question is, and brings with her, I suppose, the gift of honesty. And the question is, how does the family respond? Is that a shitty summary?
No, it's great. And there's tons of great songs.
I'm almost tempted to say we should just look at one, just to give a sense of the
Yes.
crazy flavor of this. But is that too exposing?
Nah, go for it.
Should we?
We should definitely have a look at one of the songs.
Okay, so let's watch, I think, a bit of a command performance here. George MacKay in Alone.
George, your role of the son is just so captivating, and especially this scene to me was very central because it showcases the underlying anger, the seething anger and the confusion of the character. What was your first thought when you received this quite outrageous script?
It was excitement at first, to know that it was going to be Josh making it, and Tilda Swinton was attached, and Michal Krishman, our director of photography, who shot films like Leviathan, and just to think wow, this team already. And then with it also came a director's statement from Josh that sort of, I mean, as we'll see, Josh is incredibly eloquent and articulate and smart, and he sort of distilled what this film was about, in terms of it's not just a surface level, these are bad people who are sort of kidding on. It's about that sort of, well, as Josh said earlier, it's the way that we can kind of lie to ourselves, and the tightrope between sometimes the tightrope where what is sometimes in a situation, you can't really acknowledge that so that you can move forward positively. And sometimes that's a healthy and that's a necessary choice. But then it's such a narrow margin between just ignoring something continuously or enough for the ramifications of that to be devastating, and for that action to actually be denial. Mm-hmm. And just that nuance was something that I thought was so pertinent to life, on a kind of personal sense and a sort of more global and social sense. And I don't think it's been looked at very often because it's such a tricky, nuanced nuance, if you know what I mean. So it was just excitement, really. And again, I'm always fascinated with this idea of nature versus nurture in general. And so to play a character who is the sort of perfect petri dish of that, he's a man who is sort of a boy because he has never met anyone other than the 6 people that he's surrounded by. And he's been fed a certain narrative, and yet he has instincts are innate within him that make him question that and make him desire sort of things beyond that. And I just thought that was such a fertile ground for a character and a story. And so it was, initial excitement.
And he also belts into song, like they all do. And it's not the first time you sang in a film, but it's definitely not something you do very regularly. And none of the actors really are musicians, singers, none of your colleagues. Were you scared to dive into this? Because it's very emotional. Every song and dance number is almost Disney-esque.
Yeah, it was scary, and I mean, there's two of us who have done. Brona's a musician as well as an actress, and Michael has made music as well. But definitely, I think you're right that the majority of us would sort of say that this is not our usual thing that we do. So, but again, like I think, like any project, I don't know. Myself personally, I want to try new things, try new mediums, try new ways to learn, sort of ways to express myself, and acting and storytelling and all of that. So that the fact that the musical nature of this was so integral to the storytelling, and again that kind of golden era inspired musical. Again, as much as it was a bit nerve-wracking and sometimes embarrassing, it was another reason to want to do it.
I can see that. I would be extremely scared, but that's why I'm not an actor and you are. But Joshua, going back to you, you are known as a maker of very serious documentaries. Why choose to create a fictional feature? Why choose to leave your line and then not only do a fictional feature, but go full-on musical?
Well, I sometimes think The Act of Killing was also a musical. It has 2 musical numbers in it.
Yeah.
And it has a lot of humor in it. And now we've made a very serious musical that also has a lot of humor in it. And I wanted to make, though, a third documentary in Indonesia about the billionaires who came to power by taking advantage of a country that was terrified of them, because they knew that the people knew that these men were involved with the genocide in 1965. But after The Act of Killing came out, I was unable to return safely to Indonesia. So, and I still can't return to Indonesia. Indonesia now has the son-in-law of the dictator who masterminded and came to power through the genocide as its president, Prabowo. Anyway, I started investigating, therefore, oligarchs elsewhere who'd made their money through mass violence, and specifically found an oil tycoon in Central Asia who had used violence to obtain the drilling rights to his oil fields, his oil concessions, and to clear people off that land. And I became somewhat close to him and his family, and he invited me to tour a bunker that he was buying and planned to develop into a bunker much like the one that you see in the end. And walking through this place with his family, I was just haunted by these questions that I could not ask him. Questions like, how would you cope with your guilt for the catastrophe from which you would be fleeing? How, to his wife, who I could see was sort of uncomfortable and was already talking about how few people they would bring, how would you cope with your remorse for leaving loved ones behind? And then they talked about potentially staying there for a long time and raising a new generation, and I started to imagine, well, what if you raised a generation that had never seen the outside world, so you treated them as a kind of blank canvas onto which you could paint some idealized portrait of yourself as a means of easing your own conscience. Much like, I would say, Anwar Congo, the protagonist in The Act of Killing, uses those dramatizations. And I realized that these questions were not specific to a wealthy family fleeing a catastrophe of their own making. These are universal questions. How do we deal with our children honestly? How do we take responsibility for our role in this world? What are the many ways that we, in lying to ourselves about the impact of the choices we all make and our often failure to get involved in the political collective movements of solidarity and compassion that we know are the solution to our most urgent problems? How are we already living in bunkers? Sort of haunted by all these questions, I left this place thinking the only film I want to make with this family now, this oil tycoon's family, would be the fly-on-the-wall documentary set in this bunker 25 years after the family moves in. And I realized I wasn't going to be making that film. So I then, on the way home, to kind of just clear my head, put on one of my favorite musicals, which is Jacques Demy's The Umbrellas of Cherbourg, and then thought to myself afterwards, I know what I'll do. I'll make a film called The End. It will be a kind of golden age musical, or a dark age musical. The family will be American, because this is a quintessentially American genre that's rooted in delusion, in the false hope that you can just bury your head in the sand even when you know you're accelerating toward and over the edge of a cliff, even though you know you're accelerating toward your own mortality, after which it's too late to build a meaningful life because you're gone. And yet, with your head in the sand, you can tell yourself the sun will come out tomorrow. Your future is bright, as they sing in the film. And that false hope, I realized, is indeed false. It's not hope at all. It's despair in the sheep's clothing of hope. And I thought, if I make a golden age musical set in this bunker, it's the perfect form to explore delusion and denial and sentimentality, and how that, unless we find ways of being honest with ourselves, we will head right over the abyss.
I have so many questions after this, but the most, yes. You're still very good at clapping, and I'm very proud of you all. But my first question now is quite a superficial one. Does the oil tycoon that you met know about this film?
I don't know, because this film took me 8 years from that moment to bring to the world. And one of the reasons I set that project aside was that I counted myself very lucky, even as we tried to be very careful and thoughtful about how we made and released The Act of Killing and The Look of Silence. I think in hindsight, we were all lucky that no one was hurt. And that's a responsibility I was determined to take very seriously in my next project. And I started to hear that the risks physically of working with this family, should they not like the film, would be grave. And so I kind of gently withdrew when I found this other film that I wanted to make, and I haven't shared this with them, and I haven't heard their response to this, if they've seen it or know about it.
So, to clarify, the risk for everyone in the crew involved by the family, if they...
Yeah, and it's why I don't mention, for example, what country they come from, or came from, or their name, because there was a whole local crew that had introduced me and
of course
connected me. So I just don't want, for their safety, there's no need to risk that.
Filmmaking is also always an act of caring for each other. So how did you create a space where all of you could be so vulnerable? Not only because belting out in song is creating a vulnerable space, but also the nuances, for example, you, George, bring to the table, bring to the film. They're so intense, and it's very obvious they root from some place personal. So how did you create this space where you could all be so vulnerable together?
I think that comes from everyone's collective outlook and intention when they come into it, first and foremost. And then I think Josh created that in the rehearsal process. I mean, we had, for film, an extraordinarily long rehearsal process. Mm-hmm. We had 4 weeks, which, on one hand felt like we could have done with tons more because, you know, you're always finding stuff and we're always kind of honing things. But, you know, oftentimes you come onto a film and you maybe get a week or something like that. So over the course of that 4 weeks, there was a kind of distilling of the physical language, which Sam and Ani, our choreographers, had come up with. There was all of us talking about the backstory. And just innately and almost accidentally, there'll be sort of moments where, you know, very personal realizations or insights bubble up. And I think as long as everyone's there to sort of mutually hold each other, and I think most people come with that intention, then that's the sort of the biggest kind of creation. I think with it, always time spent, you know, is a route to that as well.
Thank you for sharing that. Do you want to add to that?
Well, just you know, one of the great joys of these last few years for me has been honesty. And I think I grew up in a family where there was divorce and where my family was split to opposite sides of the American continent. And I found myself, at that age, you feel like your whole world is sort of splintered in two. And I felt that in order to keep the fragments from slipping away further, I had to tell each of my parents what they wanted to hear. And that created, I think I kind of lost myself in that sometimes. And when you make a documentary, if it's cinematically rich, even if it's a journalistic film, even if it's also of, you know, interviews and providing information, if it's cinematically rich, you're always working with the crack between how participants want to be seen, hope to be seen, and if there's any real depth to it, how they really see themselves. And that means even if you're in complete solidarity with the character, which I was not in The Act of Killing, and I was in The Look of Silence, you're never fully walking and exploring together because you need that gap. The film needs that gap. And so, you know, when Adi, in The Look of Silence, and sorry to go into a different project, but when he said, I want to go and confront the man who killed my brother, right away I said, look, he was hoping to have reconciliation with them, and I thought, we'll never get reconciliation in these confrontations. We'll get defensiveness, we'll get fear, we'll get anger. But if I can film that with precision and patience, maybe we can show the wound that's dividing neighbor from neighbor, the abyss of fear and shame that's dividing neighbor from neighbor, even sometimes relative from relative, and make anyone who sees this film, above all in Indonesia, realize that there's an urgent need for truth, reconciliation, and justice. But what Adi wanted was reconciliation with his neighbors, and that's different. And while I treasure the making of those two films as among most formative experiences of my adult life, working with George and Tilda and Michael and Moses and Brona, Lenny, Tim, from a place of total disclosure, where I just said, as best I could, as honestly as I could in the moment, this scene means this to me at the moment. This is what I bring to it. These are the layers I feel. What do you feel? I had hoped that it would be a kind of playground for everyone, but even if it is Disney-esque, some of the songs, I bristled a little bit when I heard that word, because it's so much better.
Of course, it is so much better. But
Disney-esque songs are the problem, and these songs are part of the solution. But I just will say...
Don't destroy my childhood.
Oh, no. No, that's good. Fair enough. But I had hoped for a kind of just a playground, because I come from a family where conflict was dangerous to me. And somehow being in a place where it wasn't about having fun, it was about risk and vulnerability and starting to be okay with days where, whoa, that was really hard, or that was really painful for someone, and how do we kind of recover together honestly, and with acceptance of what's past, and with an embrace for the commitment to continue. For me, as I was in my late 40s shooting this and just turned 50, that was a belated coming of age.
Wow. You mentioned it a few times already, and it was the main thought I had watching the film, about it being a story about the construction of truth and the construction of lies or self-deception. We can discuss whether it's different things or the same. And the stories we tell ourselves. So everyone who's been through therapy, for example, has had to face these really harsh situations where you confront the construction of self with maybe a reality. And it also ties this film, and you pointed out yourself, to your previous ones as well. Why is this quest for truth so central to your work? Why is it something that you keep striving towards, and how are you going to continue after this one?
Well, I mean, Socrates said the unexamined life is not worth living.
I constantly had to think of this sentence while watching the film.
And the film is called The End. And without giving away, I guess I won't go into what the end means in terms of the plot, because you won't have seen it, but the end is our mortality. It's our collective mortality as a species. We hopefully, and I believe we will, or at least we can, I believe we can still avoid the worst of the climate catastrophe that we're watching unfold if we act now. But our species is mortal. It could be, we still are stockpiling nuclear weapons, we're still creating more destructive nuclear weapons. There are many ways we can kill ourselves. And each and every one of us is mortal. And these characters are nameless because they're you. And I feel the purpose of my filmmaking is to hold up a mirror to us, always individually and collectively at the same time and in the same image, where we are able to see specifically the delusions, the lies that we cling to, the rationalizations that allow us to carry on as we are, and that hollow out our capacity to love, because being mortal, we have only one chance to live, to be together. This moment we're sharing in this theater with all of you, with you, George, with you, Aida, this is our life. This is all you have. This is all I have. And if you do this through distraction, or when you hear about the genocide in Gaza, which I have to mention because it's being carried out in my name as a Jewish person, and it breaks my heart and fills me with rage at the same time. Or we read about 1,000 people drowning in the Mediterranean Sea as they create conditions, as they escape conditions of miseration and war that we have created for them, so that our energy and our material goods and electronics and food remain cheap. And we hear these stories, and we feel, at least initially, when they're new to us, when we're not yet numb, we feel momentarily heartbroken and astonished and shocked. And then we quickly, not knowing what to do with that, search for just the right emoji to express our outrage on a social media that has all of us isolated and addicted to dopamine, to the dopamine rush of having your friends cheer you on as you post that emoji. And we post that emoji, and through that inherently sentimental and escapist gesture, give ourselves permission to turn and look away and distract ourselves with something more amusing, giving up the opportunity to listen to your heart and talk to someone right there and then, to break your isolation and talk to someone, to reach out to a neighbor, a friend, a family member and say, but we have to do something. What shall we do? The end is our mortality. We may be too late to solve the climate crisis. Each and every one of us, in a stroke of tremendous bad luck, could die tonight, or from some premature illness. The question is not, what do we do to solve all our problems? We know that we can't solve our problems alone, and we know that we can't solve our problems if we pretend they don't exist. The question is, being mortal, facing the end, having it in our nature to grow old, to get sick, to lose the people we love, and finally to die. How must we live? And that's what I want my films to leave you all thinking.
Thank you so much, Josh, for this speech. It almost feels wrong to just continue with my Humpty Dumpty questions, but I will, because there's so much to talk about, and maybe also some more clips to see. To go back to what I asked about, this quest for truth, I think it's quite astonishing how all of you on the actor's side embody this quest for truth or running away from truth. And George, you do it so perfectly, even down to the twitching of an eye, and I wonder how you can possibly control a twitching eye. How was it for you to go on this journey, and how did you go about preparing for this particular character trait? How to embody a quest for truth when you don't know what is out there?
I think, because I think, there's always a thread of you in the characters that you play that connects to it, even if the circumstance is different. There'll be, there's elements of the sun that I feel now, like that sort of the way you kind of justify, it's the same thing. Sit here and talk about climate crisis, and I took a plane to be here, I've got to go home tomorrow. There's 2 planes, and who am I to sit there? But then you go the narrative, well, if I take that one, then this will be good for this film because it gets it out there, and maybe this gets posted on the internet, then there'll be more things, and that'll be worth, it's only 2 flights at the end of the day, or maybe the best thing is just to stay at home. I don't have, I can come up with both answers to that conundrum. One that justifies myself, and one that is probably the right one. And that's what the film's about. And I think I'm doing that all the time, and I've recently become a father as well, and so
congratulations.
Thank you. But even with your little ones, you sort of go, whoa, shit. I mean, do I tell you that now, or do you need to know that now, or whatever it is of or even small lies, we've run out of biscuits, is a lie, rather than having the more difficult conversation of I don't want you to have biscuits because of your teeth or whatever, and you go mad. But all of these are now sort of frivolous, but it's constantly, I feel very connected to sons sort of navigating the truth. And then in terms of how to play it, it's very kind of you to sort of mention, but then that just becomes about learning the circumstance. As much as you learn the lines and the songs, you figure out through conversations, what does he know? What's his first memories? All this stuff that's not in the script, that when someone asks me a question in character, I can have there. When did I get lost as a boy? What was mum and dad's reaction to sort of, I got lost and that? So how far has he gone on his own in the mine? Has he ever been on his own in the mine? All of those things. And then the sort of twitch that you mentioned, that was, Josh and I spoke for a long time before we got to filming. And there was always this sense that, and when you see the film, hopefully, that the son inherently kind of knows that what he's perpetuating is not the truth, and kind of going, well, how do we tell that? Because there's, and so we talked about kind of more, again, which is wedded to the dancing that you sort of see and things like that. What if we had a version of us like, what if he it's almost like a kind of Tourette's, when the truth is there, he can't help but twitch or something. And we had really full-on ideas to begin with that I was offering, and I think Josh was probably humouring me slightly, of that it was almost like a kind of electric reaction of when a lie is told, he moves. And that was kind of big, and then it turned into dance. And the first day that Josh and I met in person, we spent 2 days workshopping these kind of like electrical ideas and what these movements would be and how big they would be and how then he would hide them from other people so not to upset them. And then that just got sort of honed down and down and down to something much more subtle, to even just the memory of that. And that becomes, a twitch. And some also, like, I can't claim credit for that twitch. Sometimes it's also, I guess when you've been thinking about it a lot, sometimes something like that happens, or just you get lucky with a twitch. But yeah, it was just, I guess it's all just about knowing the context for the character, and then some of that context being connected very personally to stuff that as a person I'm trying to figure out as well.
I think this is the perfect time to show another clip, maybe.
Can I make a suggestion? I think the song we had is a meditation on being alone that we saw, because of course the son is born in this bunker and has never seen the outside world and has only met these adults who've raised him. And now at this point in the story, the point in the story where you see where George was singing the song Alone, a young woman has come in, as I mentioned, and immediately they've decided, almost immediately, they first decide that she's not really a threat at all, or they discover that, and then they decide they have to throw her out. And the reason they have to throw her out is because they didn't let anyone else come. So the moment they change the rules for her, they have a double standard, and suddenly the mother is the murderer of her own family. And suddenly the idea of ending up alone, the last person alive, for son has become a torment. The word has, instead of being fate, it's a choice that the parents are making over his head in a way, and that's what motivated that whole song. But I think it's maybe nice, given what we were just talking about, George's incredible commitment as a performer, to look at an early scene in the film. It's a fire drill, and the family has these drills about what to do should there be an emergency, and this is a fire drill. And again, here's this guy who's fated to end up alone when all the adults are dead. So maybe we should watch Fire Drill.
Film up. I would like to talk about courage in a little time that is left for us. The motto of Berlinale Talents this year is listen courageously. And I'm, as a journalist, always intrigued by this really delicate balance between courageous filmmaking in an environment and an industry that is very much dependent on large funders, on where money is scarce, and you may depend on funding bodies or private funders who do not quite share what you believe in to finance your vision and, also deal with fickle attention spans and tastes by audiences. How can filmmakers, actors, tell these stories that require courage, that are daring, that fall out of what we see usually, what we are used to see?
I think George should go second, because I just have something very brief to say, which is that a film about the last human family that has allowed the delusion of selfishness, that you can have a meaningful life when you cut yourself off from the wider human family, and just focus on your narrow private interest. Such a film is, of course, a cautionary tale to you, but one of the things that it's warning us against is squandering our public sphere. This film would not be possible without a public sphere. This film is a Danish, Swedish, Irish, German, Italian, British co-production. This quite notable budget for a European sort of art house film was raised with the participation of all these countries who are not just looking, some of the money is about economic stimulus, but a lot of it is coming from film institutes that value culture and the stories we tell. If my work is primarily about the stories we tell, the lies we tell ourselves, and how that makes or unmakes our world, these are institutions and societies that still value storytelling as an important, and art as an important public good, art as a reflection that is an important public good. And these are also institutions, at least the Danish Film Institute, and I imagine it's true of some of the others, that enshrine in the national film law that created the institute the director's final cut. So the moment the Danish Film Institute came into this film, regardless of any contract, my final cut was protected. No one could tell me, oh, this is going to upset people, you should take that out. And I would be personally responsible for that kind of compromise. And if I were to have made it, and so I think we have to remember this is a moment where the public sphere, public consensus, public trust is under radical assault. This is a city that my grandmother fled in the 1930s to escape dictatorship and persecution by the Nazis. My adopted country, the United States of America, is becoming a dictatorship right now, if the current administration gets away with it, that uses xenophobia and racism in the same way or in analogous ways to as the Nazis did. And we right now have to stand up and protect public broadcasting, public film institutes, public spheres of all forms, including this festival and the public support for this festival, because otherwise we're just left with the vultures of multinational corporations that simply are looking after shareholders' profits and want us as addicted as possible to the shit churned out by their algorithms, some of which can be amusing, some of which can even be meaningful, but most of which is just shit.
Do you want to add to that?
I second Josh. I think Josh put it perfectly. The only thing I would add is I think, as the filmmakers in this room, just to keep choosing these projects as much as your means will allow, keep choosing them, because I think, the sort of, maybe naive, but I think the sort of wheel of industry that must also, to an extent, be respected, that turns on these kind of on successes, and if you keep aiming with this sort of algorithmic choices, those sort of swamp the market, they swamp what people go and see. So the only chance of anything that is kind of viewed is these algorithmic choices which erode people's own creativity, where if we can make more of these independent films, more of these bizarre films, more of these exciting experimental films, you're going to get more successes out of that as well. And I don't mean in a monetary sense. I mean we're just going to expand the possibilities. We're going to have more chance to be excited by films and go, oh, you can tell it this way. Oh, you can put a musical in a bunker. Oh, fantastic. And I think that will breed a sort of a broadening of the minds of the generations to come. And therefore, in the present, the best thing you can do to aid that is to keep choosing these types of projects, keep choosing the strange and the curious.
Thank you. Yes.
You asked about courage. a few times, and I would just say, in English we have this idiom about courage, go out on a limb, but go out on a limb because that's where the fruit is, out there.
I have so many more questions that I was excited to ask you, but I think those were perfect ending words for this first part of our conversation. And I would suggest we open now to the floor. I gave you some homework, so I already see a few questions. There in the middle of the room, I see a raised hand on the left side, in the middle. Someone, the younger man, not you with a scarf, you came later, the first one there. I don't know who has the microphones. There you are.
Oh. Hello, my question is, I guess, for both of the guests. In the act of killing and also the next projects, there is sort of this very deep themes of self-destruction, self-delusion, dehumanization of the people. And I just wanted to ask Mr. MacKay and Mr. Oppenheimer, it's of course a complex question, but what do you think those people who do these atrocious things think of themselves? Because if you do these things, there is no self-awareness and there is no sense of guilt. So why, for example, are you interested, Mr. Oppenheimer, in these deep emotions and deep complex questions that maybe no one has an answer?
Thank you. And if you could pass the microphone to the front, there was someone here on the left, on my left side. That would be great. Yes, get to know each other. Some community effort to move the microphone. Amazing. Very proud of you all.
Thank you. My question is at first to you, George. I've got two questions. How was the feeling to play someone who never saw the sky?
Oh, you ask the second question and then we do a round of
And then I
answer.
wanted to say to you, Joshua, my wish, it's not a question actually, it is a wish. I would wish me a president like you for the world.
You really wouldn't. You wouldn't. Speaking of presidents, in answer to the first question, were we getting another? Was that?
Oh no,
too-
I would say,
Yeah.
I would suggest,
Speaking of presidents, in answer to the first question, the father, in the end, Michael Shannon's character, and could be really nice to watch one more clip, actually, at some point. But we'll do it after. But maybe think of what I'm saying now to help set that up, and then we'll answer these questions, and then maybe watch the dinner scene. The father, it would be really tempting to portray him with judgment. And if anyone had slipped down that rabbit hole in a way that we couldn't all collectively sort of say, whoa, what's happening here, and pull them back out, no one did. The whole film would have been lost, because you would have been deliciously invited to enjoy a film where you get to point fingers at a wealthy family and feel yourself superior, like in, I guess, Don't Look Up or something, and pat yourself on the back and feel good about yourself coming out of the movie. And I think there's more nuance to Don't Look Up than that, so forgive me for I actually regret sort of sounding critical of the film. But this is, I think that when I see Michael Shannon's father, he's like an uncle, he's loving, you never doubt his sincere love for the son. He's like, Jimmy Stewart in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, but with a roiling, dangerous self-hatred and anger at his heart that makes him dangerous and fascinating. And when I pivot from him to President Donald Trump, I see a much less likable man on the surface in the president, but I see a man living in hell. I can think of little more awful than to be Donald Trump. I can think of little experience of this world more more meaningless and impoverished than Donald Trump's experience of this world. He has the whole world, or he thinks he has the whole world in his hands. We will not let him hold us in his hands. He has access to everyone and everything, and yet he has absolutely nothing. He's living in the void, just beneath the seventh circle of hell. And it's empty, and it's tragic for him. And I made a film, you mentioned The Act of Killing with Anwar Congo. This was a man who seemed to be proud, who was narcissistic, because like all narcissists, he had some kind of narcissistic injury inside of him that caused him great pain and led him to do awful things. But even he, when invited and ultimately maybe even a little bit forced to reflect on his past, could not help but choke on it, because he too is a human being. And his defensiveness, and this is, I think, the dark, awful secret in my work, his defensiveness stems not from his monstrosity, but from his humanity. He knows what he did was wrong. He can't bear it, and so he's defensive, and defensively he boasts, he lies, he projects, he says it's great, and that allows him to keep killing people, to keep torturing people, to keep bullying people. Primo Levi, speaking of the calamity that befell Europe and began here in Germany, but had its antecedents earlier, Primo Levi said, "There may be monsters among us, but they're too few for us to worry about. We have to worry about ordinary human beings like ourselves. No one is undeserving of our compassion. No one is undeserving of our recognition of their humanity, because only when people feel their humanity recognized does the need inside of them start to stir, to change their ways, look at themselves honestly, and rejoin the human community. So I strongly believe there is no one beyond our compassion, and everyone I point my camera at, I do so with the intention of hugging them as tightly as I possibly can.
George, the question how hard it was to play someone who's never seen the sky.
It was probably not such a good answer to say it wasn't too bad. Like it's because it's just, it's imagination. But what was like, what one thing that was a key into the character that came from it was only when we got down to the salt mine in Sicily, we actually went, again, you sort of judge the young man for going, poor boy, he's never seen this guy. And it is sad. But then we got into that mine and we were like, we are living inside of a dead ocean. How amazing. Like, what has he got? Like, you only know what you have. And so it sort of opened up a facet about like his curiosity of all the fossils that were held inside, all the dead sea creatures that are held inside that salt. It was a sea that has dried up and crystallized into this sort of clump of salt, which then they mined, and now our characters live. And that was the truth of it. And so to sort of, on one hand, what you lose in the sort of in his possibility that kind of refocuses it, it's kind of like doing a film. You sort of go, we're going to go to Ireland. I'm not going to see any of the sights, but what we're going to create while we're there is going to be fantastic. And I'm going to learn all this stuff about myself and about Josh and about my collaborators and singing. And but I won't see all the sights of Ireland and Germany and Italy, the places we did it. So the one thing, though, when you ask that question, Josh and I went on a walk where it was midway through rehearsals, and we've been doing a lot of technical work. And I said to Josh, can we just go for a walk and I'll just be in character for the walk and you just talk to me as son and we'll just do that. And so Josh was very kind and we went on this walk up a mountain and he was just, talking to me and I'm chatting away as son and, being the son. And then we went up to the top of this small mountain and he went, close your eyes. And so I'm walking away and chatting away. And he said, now stand here, now look up. And I opened up and I could see the sky. And it was this beautiful moment because it was it gave me a memory of his sort of heavenly imagination, so to speak, and to be there. And it was a lovely moment between us, but sort of suddenly seeing what he's not seen was a way to help imagine what he's not. So suddenly seeing what he hadn't seen was a way to sort of clarify what he hadn't seen, if you know what I mean, and what he was missing.
Can I just say two things about George? Is that okay?
Sure.
So it's good, George. It's okay. It's okay. If not, I'll tell you to go to the back. Call you back. I remember when I showed George the pictures of the salt mine where we shot the film, which is really extraordinary. I don't think you've actually seen it in its full glory in anything we've shown you yet. But you said this thing that was so wonderful. You said, that means son has an experience of nature. And we chose a mine after looking at 15 some salt mines and dozens more online, and we filmed in that mine for 3 weeks and did not see the daylight, at least in those 3 weeks, really. But the thing about it was like this dark version of these romantic landscape paintings they have on the walls. And just hearing you talk about the sea creatures and the fossils, which probably we didn't have time to talk about when we were on set, but you just got a glimpse of this man's inner life. And the other thing I want to say about George, I grew up as this kind of bullied, gay. I was bullied too. Those two things don't necessarily go together, but they did in my case. But I was bullied, and I was particularly bad and scared of being bullied on the sport field. So I was terrible at sports, anything involving a ball and running back and forth. George has very patiently shared with me his love of sport, and starting with, we were in a workshop developing the film just before we went to Ireland to shoot it, to rehearse it finally and shoot it. And it was during the World Cup, the last match of the World Cup in 2022. And you patiently talked me through what was going on, because I had no idea. And the penalty kicks really meant a lot to George. And I came to understand, George would show me these videos, including last night, of incredible sacrifice, from sports that I would struggle to watch, like boxing, but also cycling and running and people vomiting as they run over the finish line. And you asked, how come this uncontrollable muscle in George's lower eyelid can twitch right when his bubble, the sun's bubble, is pierced by some bit of truth? It's because George's level of commitment to the present moment, when you're shooting with him, when you're working with him, and for all his cast members, is like these athletes. And it's completely brave. It kind of makes the idea of courage quaint, because everything he does is so totally committed and focused. And I saw it kind of finally hit me why you love sport. And why, as we're here in this discussion of courage, I just had to share that with you, because this is like a portrait in courage right here.
Josh, you suggested we should watch another clip, and then maybe we do 2 questions more. And then you also suggested that you may sing on stage. What? Someone told me you want to sing on stage.
No, I really didn't say that.
Yeah, you did.
Aida seems fluent in English, but there was something lost in translation. I think maybe we should just watch them back to back. No, we'll take them one by one. So I think we should watch, because I was talking about the father's avuncular quality, but I think we should watch after they contemplate throwing out the girl. Someone mentioned, I think you mentioned in your question about dehumanization, This is a family that's actually unable to dehumanize the girl, although they try to. They can't throw her out. They can't bring themselves to it. And then they have her around after even shooting a gun, trying to scare her or subdue her, and almost throwing her out to her death. They let her stay. And there's a little pause, and then they have dinner, and here's just a clip from that dinner.
So there was a question here in the front on the right side. If there is a microphone coming. Yes, there's a microphone coming.
So I have a short question because when I got my tickets for this panel, I was really excited because I wanted to hear it. And when I saw your documentary and the trailer for this movie, the first thought in my mind was, this man is amazing. He does such a good job. He really wants to change the world, but he also loves cinematic art and also sci-fi, and I just need to convince him to get him for my directing my project. And I guess there were some others here in the room who had the same thought about it. And when I got here, I immediately saw the stage up there and us up here, down here, and got the idea that this is never going to happen in the way I thought about it. And immediately I thought about that it kind of is in the film industry the same way like with the bunker. You have the fame people, the ones who already did amazing things, and you have the kind of the girl who just wants to get in there and try to change the world for herself. But they don't want to risk it. Do you see any similarity regarding this and regarding the film industries and you filmmakers?
Well, I'm always open to hearing ideas, and actually not too many people throw me ideas, so you can do that. And also, I just want to, I mean, my films seem to take up, so far, chapters in my life. So The Act of Killing and The Look of Silence kind of took up my youth. And I guess this film took up my early middle age. And I'll be old next time I'm sitting up on this stage. And when I was making The Act of Killing and The Look of Silence, I was living in London. And I started the work in 2003, really, and had some of the most extraordinary footage by 2004 that went into The Look of Silence, the old footage of the two men going down to the river, boasting about how they killed. I thought the whole world needs to see this. I brought it to the BBC. The man in charge of documentary there said, "We don't want our strand awash with atrocity," and sent me away. I did a PhD in the UK, primarily so that I could keep my student visa, so I could stay with my partner, because I couldn't bring him to the United States because there were no same-sex visas for same-sex couples, and at that time. And finally, in 2007, while I was still shooting The Act of Killing, I got a call at the end of the year from Sina Børre Sørensen, a producer in Denmark, who'd seen clips of it and said, do you need a producer? Because I'd finished my PhD, I applied for some academic grant, which allowed me to shoot the film, but I had 1,000 hours of footage and we'd spent all the money shooting it, and I had no money to edit that with, and it was a mountain. I mean, it's a year to watch that much footage. And there was no AI at the time to help with transcriptions. So it was just a mountain. And she came in because she believed in the film, and we started our company together, and she got a little money to edit it in Denmark, but it was so underfinanced. We just continued because we believed in it, and it was hard. I mean, there was no support for my work in the UK. There was eventually a tiny bit in Denmark, and then this obscure experimental film about a genocide that no one's ever heard of in a country no one knows anything about in a language no one can speak except the hundreds of millions of people who speak it in Indonesia, came out and opened some doors for me. And having made something so crazy, this didn't sound crazy to people, a musical in a bunker, and that gave me license to do this. But it was a bunker for me. I still feel, and I'll always feel, that experience of being an outsider. And I hope the story you bring to me is so brightly burning in your heart that even if I can't do it, and even if every door shuts in your face, you still do it, because that's how brightly it burns. And if it's not burning that brightly, then dig deeper into your fascination, into that same story, or into what fascinates you about it. Dig deeper and deeper and deeper until it burns so brightly that it consumes you, and it will get made no matter what.
Thank you.
I think we have time for one more question. And there is, oh, you already have your microphone. Well, then it's probably going to be you.
Thanks a lot. I first of all want to thank the two or the three of you deeply from my heart. This was with the most amazing event, and I think I can say right now, even if the Berlinale is not ended yet, it will be the most memorable of all the whole Berlinale. So thank you so much. That was so touching and so inspiring and so heartfelt. All the stories you shared personally and from global views. So thank you so much. I've seen your film already because there was a small film festival called 14 Films Around the World in Germany, which usually just shows in Berlin, and I'm from Cologne. I would have traveled to another city, but it came to Cologne because I definitely wanted to see it, and I can recommend to everyone seeing it because it's amazing. One technical question, does it have a release date in Germany already? Because I didn't see it when and the other thing is, because I admire both of you and your work, is there something to look forward to in the future? Do you have future projects that you can talk about and maybe let us look forward to?
Well, I think the film, first of all, yes, to your technical question, yes, 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 yes. Please go see the film in a cinema.
Yeah.
It opens on the 27th of March. It will open in the UK on the 28th of March. It will come to Italy in May. It will come to Spain in April. It will come to the Netherlands, I think, in May. No, it'll come to Italy in June, the Netherlands in May, Poland soon. I look for it in your respective countries, but yes, the 27th of March. I'm in a very tender stage of exploring my next project. Okay. It is narrative because of the coming, it is fiction because of the coming of age that I described earlier being meaningful to me. And, you know, sometimes maybe one of the reasons my films have taken so long is because I've had these kind of big ideas that sound extravagant, like a death squad members make a musical or dramatize their memories of mass murder, or a family, we may have a golden age musical in a bunker after the end of the world. I don't think I chose those ideas or pursued those out of ego, but I really want to be intimate. I don't mean less political, I don't mean less engaged with a global political layer, but I really want to be true to myself, and maybe I will not really sing, but I'll kind of hum later, just before we go, about it. So there's one thing I can, from the film, that I can share with you. But there's, my husband Shu recently taught me this mantra that he learned as a child. It's a Zen mantra, he's from Japan. And it goes, and I think I said this earlier, it's in my nature to grow old. It's in my nature to get sick. It's in my nature to lose everyone I love. It's in my nature to die. I said this, how then shall I live? And I really want to be in that state of sudden unfurling, blossoming, and also wilting, simultaneously living and dying awareness in this miraculous moment that we call the present, without regard to sort of a great pitch or a great big idea as I make my next thing, and I'm just in the earliest and most tender stages of it, and I hope it doesn't bring me to my old age when I come back here. And what about you, George? I'll pass the buck on that one. What about you, George?
I was lucky enough to do 3 films last year, and all of which I'm really excited and passionate about, all for very different reasons, all with directors that mean a great deal to me, and I feel very privileged to be working with them. There's only one that has officially sort of announced itself, so I think that's the only one I can mention, which is a film by Mark Jenkin, who's a fantastic Cornish director, and the film's Rose of Nevada. And so, you know, who knows when it comes out? Everything's in its... all 3 of them are being edited right now, so how they fall is yet unknown, but just keep an eye out for that one, if you would.
Yeah, of course. Are you going to be at film festivals, at other film festivals?
I don't know yet. I'm sure they're all independent films, so I imagine that would be their goal. But as and what and if they get into things, we'll see.
Maybe Venice.
Can we do one more question? One more question, quick answers, and then some humming.
Yeah, can I speak lyrics and we watch the final clip? Because that's singing. Isn't that nice? And it's much better singing than you'll get from me. Yeah.
Whatever you're comfortable with, but a little birdie told me you would be interested in singing. That was past you. It was past you. Then we have one more question in the front, on the left side. In the frontest of fronts.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for everything and for the very valuable movie you put out. And my question is, like, for me, there was a special event that took place in elementary school that shaped me to who I am today and why I want to become an actress. And my question is, was there any event in your life that made you think, like, I want to make movies, I want to do this, and yeah, that's my question.
It's a tough one, but quick answers, please.
Okay, mine's very simple. I have a deep interest in the nature of consciousness, that out of this unique constellation of matter and energy that we all are, somehow it is conscious too. If I'm just cells and nerves and blood and bones, but if you were me, you would see you and feel something for you, and vice versa. That has always been miraculous to me since I was small. I tried to understand that, and I was also nerdy as a kid, and when I was in high school, started to learn about quantum mechanics, and I learned that consciousness is part of the fabric of the universe there, and that led me to try to study physics in university, but I realized that it was just being pushed toward engineering, and that the only way to really understand consciousness was through a journey of empathy and exploration that became filmmaking.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Your answer's going to be better and more relevant to them.
No, I think it was asked to you.
It'll be more relevant.
No. Well, mine was at school as well. I was lucky enough to get my first job as a kid at school, and then had lots of wonderful experiences as a child on set without really thinking about it in terms of a job. And then, but when I was 19, the first film that I was kind of ostensibly one of the leads in, and I was 19, so I was there on my own, just that sort of sense of ownership of work and really sort of just simply being there every day, working the same hours as everyone else, and being encouraged by that director to understand the part myself was that simple sort of feeling of responsibility and ownership over the work because of that was kind of changed everything for me and made me want to do it into my adulthood.
Thank you all for your fantastic questions. Sorry to everyone who couldn't ask their question yet, but maybe some other time in some other universe soon. And thank you both so much for sharing all your wisdom and your thoughts with us. And can you tell us a little bit about the last clip we're going to see?
Yeah. So I think we'll play the clip, and then I will decide if I sing or speak. Might be speaking. I'll listen courageously to the clip, and then see if I find the courage to sing the lyrics that you would get just as well if I speak them. But this is a moment where the young woman who you saw sitting next to George, played by Moses Ingram, who's come into the bunker, has brought this gift, I would say, of acceptance. She also has her regrets because she's left people behind to survive. But she doesn't, the gift she's brought really, in a way, is the ability to feel and express guilt without shame. This is a really crucial distinction that I'm happy we're ending on. Shame is a concern. In English, we almost use these words interchangeably, but guilt is a feeling in your heart that something's painful and that you must do something about it. Shame is a concern with how you appear in the eyes of others. And this bunker, where Sun has grown up, is a prison of shame. What keeps them in there is not just bad conditions on the surface. They could go up and take a look. What keeps them in there is shame, because if they went up, they'd have to see what they'd done to the world and where they left their loved ones to die. And by suddenly Sun meets someone who's blown his world open, I guess, by showing that you can have remorse, and with acceptance, you can ask forgiveness with acceptance and without shame, and it's mind-blowing. And the axis of the cosmos somehow shifts in this moment where they come together and start to really become friends and change the destiny of this last human family. So shall we play duet, I think it's called. The song is called Catch Fire. Okay, only because I'd be a hypocrite if I didn't sing now. I will give you a little glimpse into the tune of the words. I think in that scene, girl is sharing with Sun a way of being amid uncertainty, and specifically amid the inevitability of our mortality. That at any moment we could die, that you never know how much time you have left, as I said earlier. And for this young woman, when she lived outside the bunker on the surface of the world, any day could be the last, because the conditions were so harsh. And there's a solo she sings alone, which I think embodies the ethos, embodies the renaissance that she brings to Sun's life in the scene we've just seen, but brings to the whole family. And then the question is, what will happen? Will they be able to accept that? Will they be able to grow fully into that? But I hope you'll listen to this, ignore my voice, maybe take note of the melody. This is awful. But I'll try. And I'm not being coy, my voice is terrible, but I'll just go for it. But I hope you'll be able to take note of these words as you leave here and you leave this dark room and exit into a still breathable atmosphere underneath a still beautiful sky, and ask yourself, what must we do to keep this going for as long as we can keep it going, and with greater love and greater humanity than we have at the moment. And it goes like this. The seconds ticking past so fast, before you notice them, they're gone forever. But I remember time when moments did not disappear, When I close my eyes, a single breath could go on and on forever. So how few breaths we might have left meant nothing much at all.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
It's wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you, audience.
Thank you so much. That was so fun. Danke für die Uhrzeiten. Ich nehme normalerweise mein Handy mit.
Alles weiß.